the latest with Trey Miguel, who is back in TNA after a pretty wild week for Trey. A week where he joined and exited AEW. Miguel, 31, and he was set to debut in AEW alongside the rest of the Rascals, Zachary Wentz, Desmond Xavier, and Myron Reed, after the group left TNA and signed with AEW. And just to recap all of this, people will probably be up on it from your news pack on Wednesday. You know, we had the signing announcement on Dynamite, and then last Saturday, the Rascals appeared on Collision minus Trey Miguel, which immediately set off speculation about his status. Fightful reported that Miguel had been released almost immediately, and that it was connected to an old social media post resurfacing. The post dates back to 2020. I looked this up. I have to say, I was curious as to what exactly it was. What was the intensity of this post and what happened? It was a Facebook group back and forth, and Outsports seems to have the wording of all of this. It's certainly homophobic. He's dealing with a fan who's trolling him a little bit, and not to offend anyone, but I feel like I have permission to sort of say this. He says, obviously you're gay, to this guy who's annoying him. Most people as unattractive as you become gay out of fear of rejection from the opposite sex, so you find comfortability and familiarity in the same sex and end up matching someone who's the same as you. Gay. Because there's no other fucking options. You ugly bitch. Yeah, truth's a bitch. Now, my reaction on this was, certainly it's homophobic. Certainly it's offensive. But you'll notice that I'm kind of smiling because I've seen so much worse, and this more as well, it's 50% offensive and homophobic, and to me about 50%, something like a 15-year-old would say in the schoolyard. I'm not trying to lighten this, but I've seen so much worse, where there's slurs being thrown about, where there's threats of violence being thrown about. So I'm just saying that not to lessen the impact of it to those who feel it's much worse than that, but only to say there's a spectrum of just how awful you can be. And I really feel, let's jump to the apology. Miguel then said, after being called out on this, I'm not anti-LGBTQ+. I made some very mean comments to a member of the community in regards to why they were a member, and it wasn't right or tasteful. Regardless of the comments made to get me to such an ugly place, I was wrong, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Two of my very best friends are members of said community, and I'd take a bullet for either of them. I won't try to justify anything I said, but I will apologise like a man. If I offended you, then I'm genuinely sorry. Please find it in your hearts to forgive me. If you can't forgive me, I do not blame you. But this world needs more love than hate, and I'm sorry for contributing to the less desired of the two. To me, and I am not setting myself up as a representative for the LGBTQ plus community. This is certainly just a personal view. That comes across to me as it's not been workshopped or written for him. You know, there's some spelling errors in there. There's some words missing. It's clearly his own words. It feels like a full apology to me. And this guy has apologized since, and it's almost 6 years ago, and all of this time has passed. So I know that you and John covered this fairly comprehensively on Wednesday, but I like to get my chance to sort of talk about it. And I just feel, does the punishment fit the crime here in this particular case? Because every case is different and every person is different. And I feel, no. He's back in TNA, and to flesh out that a little, he appeared on Impact on Thursday as a surprise in the Feast or Fired match, and came out of it with one of the briefcases. So that was his return. But I'm imagining he's missing out on higher pay that he would have got at AEW. He's missing out on being with his pals, his running mates, his friends. And this can't have been an easy thing to think that you have signed on the dotted line and you've got a deal with the number 2 promotion, and that gets whipped away. So that's my 2 cents on the Trey Miguel situation. I guess I'm glad that he's made it back to somewhere that's familiar and welcoming to him. And he made a post today saying, I plan to step away from wrestling after the week I went through. It was really hard on me mentally and emotionally. I didn't think I could do it anymore. Thank you to everyone who had my back, especially TNA. It was hard not to quit, but we can't give up. Thank you, God. So that's his mindset. So, who are we to judge whether some time off might have been good for him or whether getting right back into it is the best thing? He'll know for himself. And it's good that he's surrounded with people who are supportive. I just wanted to get my viewpoint in there, as a member of said community, as Trey would say. I feel like they've been very tough on him, and this has been a Warner Brothers call, not a Tony call, as that's all of the reporting, at least, which I tend to believe.
Have you had much of a sense of how the public has responded to his return to TNA?
Not so far, but really just dipping in to social media, and it's hard because it's curated for all of us. You're sort of given your own stream, and all of this. And I try not to spend an awful lot of time on X, but I feel that the general mood has been one of support for him, it's been too harsh, and happiness that on some level that at least he's not on the outs completely. He's found his way back to a promotion. He's working. He's earning money.
That was the sense I got too. And coming off of a debut episode that garnered a lot of bad, criticism of TNA, I felt like this was a swing, at least like for public perception, in the right direction to, give this guy a home and to, you can argue, maybe give him a chance despite all of this coming out the past week. From what I could tell, it seemed to be met pretty positively. And as I think, we discussed last week, unfortunately, this whole controversy, has somewhat made him a more interesting, you can at least say, professional wrestler, certainly a more well-known professional wrestler, probably for all the wrong reasons. Nobody wants to be known as a result of something like this. Nonetheless, there is a level of sympathy that I think audiences may have for this punishment that some may deem to be too harsh. And as a result, I think it represents an opportunity for TNA to suddenly have somebody who a lot of people are talking about. We spent like 3 of our news packs over the past week talking about this particular story. So if you're TNA, what would you do with Trey Miguel at this point in time?
Push him pretty hard. Yeah, he is a terrific talent. And I think, as John alluded to, and he's more of a TNA weekly watcher than either of us are, when the Rascals were signed away, I think that was a big hit to their X division in particular. And having Trey Miguel back there, I think, is a real benefit. And if he can work with people like Ali and do very well. So yeah, I think having somebody, a high flyer, pacey, talented wrestler like that is very good for them.
January is your month to beat the price increase at the Post Wrestling Cafe. Before our regular tier jumps to $8, you have a chance to lock in the old existing price for all of 2026, but you've got to do it before February 1st. Also this month, we kick off our WWE Unreal Season 2 reviews with weekly releases covering each and every episode. We'll also be looking back at the Okada-Tanahashi feud dating back to 2012 with some of their most famous matches. Plus, Chris Jericho's A Lion's Tale will be the subject of this month's book club. All that and more is yours at postwrestlingcafe.com.